Yes, that was, so the first question, sisters, what's your full name? How do you spell it?
Ann McCartney, Sister Ann McCartney, ANNMCCERTNEY.
Excellent. So, sister, obviously, first question is you joined the sisters in Scotland.
I did, yes.
How did that come about?
Well, I had no intention of becoming a sister, and I was in the Legion of Mary, and I was working in the parish one Saturday night, and the priest from the parish, there was going to be a vocation exhibit in my parish, and the priest came in and he said, "Come on over to the hall, some sisters are setting up their booths." And I said, "I really don't have any intention." He says, "Oh, come over and meet them." So we wandered around, and he was cute. He said to them, "There's somebody sign her up before she leaves." But anyway, I met the two sisters then, and Sister Elizabeth Ann and Sister Eileen Ann, and they were from a different diocese from us, and they had begged the bishop to let them come to the Paisley diocese to be at the exhibit. So I met them, gave them some contact information, and then I just kept hearing from them. And he kept inviting me for a weekend to Bethania, and so I eventually went for a weekend, and I had to take a train, a ferry, taxi to get there. And I rang the doorbell, and one of the residents let me in, and such a feeling came over me when I hadn't even seen anybody else, but when I got into that front parlour, such a feeling came over me, and I said, "I don't know what they have, but I want it." It was really a gift at that stage. So I spent the weekend with them, and then I started to go every other month. I started to go for a weekend, and then within the year, I had the opportunity to be able to enter. And during that year, Mother Angeline came over. I think twice she was over for meetings, so I got to meet her then at that stage, and then joined the convent in 1967.
That's fantastic. One of the things good to explain for the camera is, what is Bethania? Where was it?
Bethania was a little house in Dunoon. There were 31 residents, I think, there. They had belonged to another community that was disbanding, and the sisters from that community, 4 of them, joined us. And a priest friend of Mother Angeline from Glasgow contacted our community, and they decided that, this was before the 1965, I think, and so the community decided to actually take it over. And it was right on the River Clyde. It was absolutely a beautiful little place.
So obviously it's not longer there anymore. Could you explain why it's not there?
That was my first mission after I had been in the novitiate and went back to Scotland as a professed sister, and I lived there, and it was very difficult. There was no place to expand on the property. There was a mountain behind, and it was really closed in from each side. Couldn't go forward because it was on the road, right on the front road, and it was difficult to get a lot of things, repairs, get people to come and work it. I left there after 3 years and moved to Dublin, to our nursing home in Dublin, and it was 2 years later that they closed up the place in Scotland.
So how did you end up going from Dublin to here?
That little thing called obedience, when you get a transfer. You get a little letter telling you it's time to move. I spent 10 years in Dublin in our nursing home, went to nursing school in Ireland, and spent 10 years working with the residents. And then in 1983, I was transferred from there to Connecticut. We had a home in Connecticut, St. Joseph's Manor, and I spent 3 years there. And from there, I began obedience to Staten Island, New York, to our nursing home there. And that was another 7 years. And then from there, I moved to our farthest away home in Iowa. Spent 10 years in Iowa. And that was probably my happiest mission, believe it or not, out of 57 years. And then from Iowa to Illinois, from Illinois to Pennsylvania, to 2 places. I spent time in Roxbury, Pennsylvania, at Little Flower Manor, and most recently, for the past 8 years, I've been in Hollidaysburg and Garvey Manor Nursing Home. That's where I work in pastoral services and in the current home that I'm in.
Well, one of the things is you've mentioned a lot of places you've been. it was during the life of Mother Angeline. How involved was she in these different places? Did you see much of her? What was she like?
Mother Angeline? Well, she passed away in 1984. So before that, we would see her if we came up on retreat, or if she visited the home that we would be in for board meetings, some contact then. When I first entered the convent, my mother wasn't thrilled. And the fact that it was an American community, in her mind, I must have wanted to get away from home because there were so many convents in Scotland. Why didn't I enter one of them? So it was difficult. She had sent a letter to me and said that since I wanted to get away, that would be the last I would hear from her. And my postulant mistress sent the letter. She got the letter and she sent it up to the mother house. I was in her home in Rhinebeck, and a couple of weeks later I received another letter from my mother, and this one was so different. She said her one goal was to meet my new mother. I had no idea what she was talking about until I found out later that my letter found its way to Mother, and she wrote to my mother, told her that the sacrifice was hers, that I was getting what God wanted me to have, but the sacrifice was hers, and that she would be rewarded for that. So as I said, my mother always wanted to meet Mother Angeline, and she had hoped that by the time I would make my final vows, she would have saved enough money to come and over to the community for finals. But during my time in the novitiate, I guess some relative died and left some money to my mother and her brother and sister. And again, she contacted the mother house here, asked if they would keep it a surprise for me, and that could she come over for my profession. And Mother Angeline had a class with us. There were two of us not having company, and Mother Angeline sat at that class and said, and for the two sisters that won't be having company, we'll make sure that, things go well. Meanwhile, my mother was already here, and Mother knew that, and she told me afterwards, I love surprises, and I was so happy to do that. And then before my first profession, she invited them over from Ferncliff up to the mother house and met them. She actually had purchased an outfit for my mother, my sister, and my niece. Had never met them, but purchased 3 outfits that they were able to wear for my profession. They were just perfect. They really were,
Yeah.
And then we went to, after profession, we went to New York for a week. And one night I was paged on the phone, and it was Mother's driver, Norbert. And he said to me, Mother is here for meetings, and she told me to take the car and take you and your family and drive you around New York for nighttime. They were building the World Trade Center at that time, the Twin Towers. He drove us to there. We actually saw the first Twin Towers just before they were completed, and that would have been 1970. So she was kind to me. We're doing a legacy of kindness this year, and Mother's kindness to me was just absolutely tremendous. And to my family, she really was amazing.
How did your mother find Mother? Did your mother talk with Mother Angeline herself and say how nice she was?
Had a meeting, yeah. When she came up, when my mother and my sister and my niece came up to Avila, we met with Mother Angeline and Mother Brendan. So she did get the opportunity to meet my new mother. And the really interesting thing is, my mother had always hoped to come for my final vows. The morning I received my letter inviting me to make final vows, my mother had a massive heart attack and died. So, God's plan was on this from the beginning, the whole way through, because she would have, not been able to be there, for final vows.
What was, you being Scottish, what did you think of Mother's accent? What was it like?
Well, she had a really good Scottish accent. When I told her a little bit this morning, the day I answered the phone, and at the other end of the phone with Mother, she only asked one question then, so I didn't realise the accent. But as I got to meet her as a novice, it was much more Scottish than it was Irish, you know. Well, I think she was 7 when they moved to Scotland. You know, so I just found such an affinity of knowing that, you know, this is what the Lord had wanted for me through Mother Angeline.
And the final question is, what makes her a saint in your eyes?
Her kindness and always wanting to do for somebody else. There was never, you know, I came in 67 and she died in 84, so there was a lot of years in between. It was always for somebody else that she wanted to do something, anything, you know. That's what made her a saint in my eyes, that the Lord used her to help other people. You know, when she started the community, it was because she felt there was a better way than what she was doing initially, that there was a much better way of caring for the elderly, treating their dignity, you know, allowing couples to be together, you know, only moving them if their level of care was different, and always able to move with what the need for the residents was at any given time. You know, so that's where we always saw her as a saint. She loved Scottish music. One of the songs, when we were volunteers, we put a little concert on for her, and one of the songs that she asked for was "Keep Right On to the End of the Road," and she told us that was what she always wanted to do for God, and for Jesus to keep right on to the end of the road, and that everything that He had planned for her would be there.
Lovely way to end, and the dog agrees.